During the COVID-19 pandemic, Americans stuck at home started to take a hard look at their surroundings. And that has led to a home improvement boom. Furniture retailers, pool companies, and others have seen demand soar and share prices rise. Pool installer Latham said its sales for the first quarter of 2021 were up 191% year over year. High-end home goods and design company RH said its revenue for the first quarter of 2021 was up 78%. It was down 19% a year ago. And many customers are also deciding it is time to build a deck. Skyrocketing demand combined with historically high lumber prices led to very good fortune for a couple of publicly traded companies that make a rather humble-sounding product: fake wood decks. Strictly speaking, these are composite decks and polymer decks. Composite decks are typically made of plastic, often with wood fiber and sawdust mixed in. Polymer or PVC decks are pretty similar, but made entirely from plastic. They typically have two layers: a core made of plastic, sometimes combined with wood flour or sawdust, and a cap that seals the product and achieves the look that simulates wood. Two of the biggest names in this space are Trex and AZEK. Together, they control about 75% of the composite decking market, which is in turn about 20% of the entire $8 billion decking market. A third brand, Fiberon, has about 10% share. Wood alternative deck makers say their products often look nearly identical to wood and last for decades, much longer than a typical wood deck. They are also billing themselves as an eco-friendly option. Trex's product is made almost entirely from recycled materials, and AZEK has been working to boost its products' recycled content. Both are commonly available brands that were growing sales even prior to the pandemic due to growth in the housing market and aging housing stock and an increased interest in alternatives to wood, which may look great but can cost more money and energy to maintain over its lifetime. And both AZEK and Trex say there is room to grow. So do some of the contractors who install decks, both wood and wood alternatives. But these materials are expensive and they are not without their drawbacks. How much share can these players grab? How many people would pay for a fake wood deck? The total decking market is growing at a rate of about 6% per year. Composite decking has been growing at a rate closer to 10% per year, and some companies are doing better than that. Trex is the market leader with about 50%.
Whereas the Trex company has grown at about 16% average over the last 5 years. Mostly because of our actions on converting wood into composite buyers and bringing more attention to the industry, making sure that we're educating those consumers that there are affordable products that will perform for 25 years plus on their deck, rather than installing wood, which will probably have to be replaced between 10 and 15 years at the high end.
Trex started in 1988 when a businessman named Roger Wittenberg blended sawdust with recycled plastic to make a park bench. The company started producing composite decking in 1993. Trex then went public in 1999. Its sales have roughly doubled in 5 years, from $440.8 million in 2015 to $880.8 million in 2020. Over the same time, net income has grown from $48.1 million in 2015 to $175.6 million in 2020. In the fourth quarter of 2020, Trex's sales grew 39% over the same quarter in 2019. That is notable because the final quarter of the year is when winter and the holiday season are setting in and construction tends to slow down. By mid-July of 2021, the company's shares had risen more than 700% in the past 5 years. AZEK is second in the industry and markets itself as a more premium product line. It was founded in 1983 as a manufacturer of plastic sheet products for commercial and industrial applications. It later expanded into low-maintenance, high-performance residential building products. AZEK branded trim came out in 1999, and decking and railing followed in the 2000s. TimberTech, its main decking brand, was founded in 1997 and bought by AZEK, then called CPG, in 2012. AZEK went public in June of 2020, and its sales have grown from $632.6 million in 2017 to $899.3 million in 2020. But the company has been losing money. It had a net loss of $20.2 million in 2019 and a loss of $122.2 million in 2020.
In each of the categories that we play, it's really important for us that we have technology that gives you a better aesthetic and allows you to have more design flexibility. And so we tend to be the visual leader. We have more we have more types of products, and in each of the categories, we're differentiated that way. Our outdoor living business, which includes decking, really over the last 10 years has had a 14% growth rate. And so really, independent of which window you look at, whether it's 5 years or 10 years, we've seen really, really strong growth, for the category, especially coming into the pandemic.
Nevertheless, AZEK shares have risen since the company's IPO. Both Trex and AZEK make use of recycled materials. 95% of what goes into Trex's decking comes from recycled materials. The company buys wood and secures recycled polyethylene, mostly from plastic bags, wrap, and canisters, from its roughly 32,000 collection stations at stores and distribution centers across the United States and Canada. It converts this into decking through a process it closely guards.
Most organizations, most manufacturing, they want a very clean, very consistent stream coming into the front part of the manufacturing line, and I'll give you a consistent product at the end of the line. We do the opposite. We get a highly variable raw material stream coming in the beginning of the line, and we'll give you a highly consistent, highly valuable product at the end of the line.
AZEK says it uses up to 80% recycled content in its capped composite decking and approximately 50% recycled content in its capped polymer decking. It's investing in raising the recycled material content of its product. For example, the company recently bought a PVC recycling facility. There are a few reasons why demand for these lumber alternatives is growing. The first is an increased interest in outdoor living, a trend that has been growing for years, but that accelerated during the COVID-19 pandemic. The American Institute of Architects' annual Home Design Trends survey shows that interest in outdoor living has been extremely popular in recent years. In its most recent survey, in the first quarter of 2021, architects saw a dramatic uptick in spending on outdoor living space over a year earlier. About 74% of architects surveyed reported requests from clients related to outdoor living spaces. That is about a 20% jump over the same quarter in 2020. The uptick is notable in part because outdoor space improvements have been popular among clients for years. In addition, the millennial generation is beginning to move out to the suburbs and seek homeownership. The second reason is long-term cost-effectiveness versus wood. The price of composite decking is generally quite a bit higher than a similar wood product. Trex estimates that composite decking will have a starting cost of $30 per square foot, including installation, whereas lumber, recent dramatic price swings notwithstanding, starts at about half that. Trex has tried to peg the price of its product at no more than twice the cost of lumber. These companies say wood alternatives won't need the same amount of maintenance, no stripping, sanding, or refinishing, and are far more resistant to fading. Both AZEK and Trex say their composite or PVC products will last decades. At the same time, COVID-related demand spiked, lumber prices began to skyrocket. They shot up 275% during the pandemic before finally backing off in May of 2021.
There were two things that we needed to do to increase that conversion rate. First was have a product that sold for 2 times the price of wood. It didn't have to be right at the price of wood, but 2 times the price of wood, where it was about a $600 upcharge for the average deck. That was where the consumer is able to say, oh, okay, I can afford that, that makes sense. And once the consumer sees that they can do that, they're actually willing to move up to a higher level of aesthetic as well.
While wood has a natural charm to it, many customers are not terribly thrilled with the maintenance. Even before the pandemic, composite decking was still winning converts.
So composite boards can withstand years of sun and snow and won't fade, rot, or become termite food. So when comparing composites versus wood, there's really no competition which material is better. Over the 25-year lifetime of a composite deck, the maintenance savings versus wood is in the thousands of dollars.
The third reason for rising interest is aesthetics. Using composites and PVC allows for a wide variety of looks. For example, AZEK has several collections with different names like Vintage and Harvest that give clues as to what kind of wood the material is mimicking.
We've got an ability now with newer technologies that you can really design the environment you want, whether that's a wood look, a more modern look. And in many cases, and in our case, almost all cases, it's really indistinguishable from the natural equivalent, with the one exception of it's going to look the same for 30 to 50 years, and it uses recycled materials in its construct.
Eric Perkins is a contractor in North Carolina who also has a YouTube channel with his brother called Perkins Brothers Builders. He has been sponsored by Trex in the past, but currently has no such relationship with any decking company.
Yeah, some of the older products really looked like plastic decking. They were like gray, speckly looking boards. And all the companies have done a great job to really make it look more realistic, make it look more like wood grain and the multicolored of a, wood, natural wood would look. You are going to pay a price for that. And so some people are willing to do that. And the clients that we've had have really loved it. And, but it's one of those things that's, do I want nicer cabinets or do I want a nicer looking deck finish?
For a deck that gets a lot of sunlight, a composite or PVC deck will resist fading, but composite decks also get pretty hot since the material is so dense. PVC does not get as hot, but it will be more expensive and has its own limitations.
If you have a dark color. So, buyer beware if you're going to get Trex or other composite decking and you're going to put it in direct sunlight and you live in Mississippi, you might want to think about getting the lightest color possible. Obviously, that'll stay a little cooler.
The companies in this space think composites can take a lot of share away from wood. They already have in other categories. In siding, for example, wood only commands a 13% market share. Fiber cement, vinyl, PVC, and other materials have all but taken over that segment of the market. Trex has been betting on continued growth for some time. In June 2019, the company announced a multi-year capital investment plan worth $200 million. At the time, executives said the plan was a response to faster than expected conversions from lumber to composite decking. As part of the plan, Trex built a new 200,000 square foot factory. The new building, which opened in January 2021, is part of the $200 million plan designed to achieve a 70% increase in decking capacity. Trex also made upgrades to production facilities in Nevada. Wood accounts for about 78% of the overall marketplace, and Trex especially thinks it can steal more of a share from lumber. There are about 60 million decks in the United States, and about half of them are thought to be past their useful life. While AZEK also wants to grow its decking business, it is also thinking of how it can cluster decking products within a larger outdoor product portfolio.
We think that this category is going to continue to expand. We deal with porches, which is the front of the house. As people look at the backyard, it's not just deck. People are doing much more on surfaces. I mentioned patios. There's just a lot of opportunity as people focus more and more outside. For companies like us, as we continue to invest not only in the decking side of the business, but the stuff around the outside of the house that provide that sustainable, low maintenance beauty.
Both companies are leaning into sustainability and recycling, in part because both believe social responsibility is a high priority for a lot of customers today, especially younger ones. Just as Trex has been the pioneer in the composite decking category, it has also led in the use of recycled materials. In 2020, it used 362 million pounds of recycled plastic and another 547 million pounds of reclaimed wood. That said, AZEK is committed to catching up to its rival. Within the last year, it completed a life cycle assessment and found that its composite and PVC products have lower total carbon footprints than sustainably harvested pine, 15% lower for wood composite and 5% for PVC. In fiscal year 2020, AZEK used 400 million pounds of recycled material to make its products, mostly recycled plastic with some recycled wood flour. It wants to raise that to 1 billion pounds annually by the end of 2026. It's important not to oversell the sustainability angle, says Eric Perkins. But if they look good, last a long time, and provide minimal worry, they might continue their spread across the country.